Have you ever felt that the harder you try to control your life, the more it slips through your fingers? You meticulously build routines, you set ambitious goals, you declare a relentless war on your own perceived flaws, your procrastination, your anxiety, your lack of discipline, believing with absolute certainty that if you could just conquer these internal enemies, you would finally achieve a state of lasting peace. Yet the war never ends. In fact, with every battle you wage, the enemy seems to grow stronger, more resilient, more deeply entrenched in the very fabric of your being. This feeling of being trapped in a self-made prison, where the warden and the prisoner are one and the same, is a profound and exhausting form of suffering. It is the quiet agony of fighting a civil war within your own psyche, a conflict you are beginning to suspect is utterly unwinnable. This internal struggle, this constant sense of being at odds with yourself, is not a personal failing. It is not a sign of weakness or a defect in your character. You must understand this with absolute clarity. You are experiencing a fundamental condition of the modern, unexamined mind. You have been taught to see your inner world as a territory to be conquered and sanitized. A kingdom where the rational ego must rule with an iron fist, exiling any thought, emotion, or impulse that does not conform to its idealized self-portrait. The frustration you feel is the direct result of this flawed strategy. You are fighting a war you do not understand because you have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of the conflict. You have mistaken a vital, albeit challenging part of your own self for a foreign invader that must be destroyed at all costs. The central paradox is this: your effort is the engine of your suffering. The very force you apply to suppress the unwanted parts of yourself is precisely what gives them their power. Think of it as trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The more forcefully you push it down, the more violently it will eventually erupt to the surface, often at the most inopportune moments. Your desperate struggle to eliminate anxiety is what makes you anxious. Your rigid campaign for perfect discipline is what fuels the rebellion of procrastination. You are locked in a feedback loop where your resistance energizes the very thing you resist. This is why all your strategies of control and self-improvement have ultimately failed, leaving you more exhausted and internally divided than when you began. You are caught in a vicious cycle, a war of attrition against an inexhaustible foe. But this feeling of being adrift, of being locked in a perpetual and losing battle, has a source. It is not a random malfunction of your mind, but the predictable outcome of a deep internal schism. There is a powerful hidden force operating beneath the surface of your consciousness, a disowned part of your psyche that has been pushed into the darkness, and it is relentlessly undermining your efforts to build a life of sterile perfection. This is not a life sentenced to struggle. The war can end, but not through victory. It ends through understanding. It ends when you finally turn to face the adversary you have been fighting your entire life. This force has a name, and today we are going to name it. If this internal battle feels familiar, affirm your journey by commenting with the phrase, *the silent war. Of course. Here is Act 2 of the video essay script, structured precisely according to your technical and creative specifications. Naima, Naimans, Act 2, the archetypal journey through the psyche. Naimo, Block 2, the mentor and the map. The first step on this internal journey is to understand the cartography of your own mind. The conscious part of you, the voice in your head that says I, is what the analytical psychologist Carl Jung termed the ego. You must picture the ego as the self-appointed general in the war for your soul. Its primary function is to create a stable identity, a persona, that can successfully navigate the external world. It builds this identity upon a strict set of principles, what it deems acceptable, rational, moral, and strong. This ego constructs a detailed blueprint for the ideal person you believe you should be, and it is a necessary component for functioning in society. However, the fundamental error, the original sin of the modern psyche, is the belief that this limited general is the entire kingdom. The problem begins, and the war is declared, the moment your ego attempts to govern the entire, vast, and wild landscape of your inner world with an iron fist. It begins to treat any thought, feeling, or impulse that does not conform to its idealized self-portrait as a traitorous insurrection that must be exiled, imprisoned, or executed. This act of suppression, This violent rejection of what is the first shot fired in a war that can never, ever be won through conquest. Block 3. 1. The backwards law of the psyche. To grasp the futility of this internal war, you must first understand what the philosopher Allan Watts called the backwards law. This is not a clever turn of phrase. It is a fundamental principle of your psychological reality. The law states that the more you consciously and forcefully pursue a desired state of mind, the more it will elude you. When you desperately try to be happy, you become acutely aware of everything that is making you unhappy, thus deepening your sorrow. When you strain to calm your anxious mind, your very effort creates more tension and agitation. This law applies with devastating precision to your internal conflict. Your relentless, white-knuckled effort to eliminate anxiety is the very fuel that feeds its fire, creating a feedback loop of fear about fear itself. Your rigid, militant campaign for perfect discipline and productivity is precisely what gives rebellious power to the forces of procrastination and self-sabotage. You are, in effect, energizing your declared enemy with your own resistance. The force you exert to hold the beach ball of your unwanted traits underwater is the exact force that guarantees it will erupt violently to the surface. Your strategy is not just failing, it is the very engine of your suffering. Block 4, 2. The midpoint, naming the antagonist, the force you have been fighting. This inexhaustible enemy that seems to thrive on your resistance is not a flaw to be corrected. It is not a bug in your system or a sign of moral weakness. It is a fundamental, necessary, and powerful component of your very being. In the language of the psyche, this entity is known as the shadow. The shadow is the archetypal repository for every part of yourself that your conscious ego has disowned. It is the dark container in the basement of your mind where you have thrown everything you deemed unacceptable. Your rage, your envy, your untamed sexuality, your vulnerability, your irrational fears, but also, and this is critical, your rawest creativity, your deepest intuition, and your undeveloped potential for chaos and spontaneity. You must understand this with absolute clarity. Your problem is not that you have a shadow. Every complete human being has one. Your profound suffering comes from the delusion that you can live a full life without it. The war is unwinnable because you have mistaken a vital part of your own territory for a foreign invader. This is no longer a problem to be fixed. It is a sacred journey of reunification to be undertaken. Block 5. 3. The language of the shadow. How does this disowned shadow communicate with you from its exile in the unconscious? It does not speak in clear, rational language. That is the language of the ego. The shadow speaks in the language of symptoms, symbols, and eruptions. Your sudden, inexplicable bout of anxiety before a major presentation is not just a random neurological glitch. It is a message from the shadow, perhaps signaling a fear of failure, or, conversely, a fear of success that your ego refuses to acknowledge. Your chronic procrastination on a task you know is important is not mere laziness. It is a form of passive rebellion, a communication from a part of you that feels unseen or resents the tyrannical control of your rigid plans. Most powerfully, the shadow speaks through projection. That person who elicits an intensely negative, judgmental, and irrational reaction from you is often a mirror, reflecting a disowned trait of your own shadow that you cannot bear to see in yourself. For your entire life, you have been treating these communications as malfunctions to be silenced. The path forward requires a radical shift. You must learn to see them as missives from a vital, repressed part of your psyche that is not trying to destroy you, but is desperately trying to make you whole. Block 6. 4. Allan Watts and the Art of Non-Resistance. The strategy for engaging this powerful inner force is, fittingly, an inversion of your every instinct. Allan Watts provided the perfect metaphor for this approach when he taught that muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. True mastery over the psyche comes not from more control, but from intelligent acquiescence. You cannot fight your shadow into submission. You cannot reason it away with positive affirmations. You cannot analyze it into oblivion. The first and most crucial step is to cease the war. This letting go is not apathy or resignation. It is the highest and most difficult form of attention. It is the courageous act of observing the uncomfortable thoughts, the unacceptable urges, and the painful emotions that arise from the unconscious without judgment and, most importantly, without an immediate need to act upon them or extinguish them. It is creating a space within your consciousness where the shadow is allowed to emerge from the darkness and simply be seen. This act of non-resistant observation is the beginning of all internal healing, for it communicates to the disowned parts of yourself that they are no longer at war. Dots Crew, Block 7. 5. The peril of the divided self. To continue this war is to condemn yourself to a life of profound internal division and quiet desperation. A psyche that is at war with itself cannot by definition be at peace with the world. It will inevitably leak its inner conflict outward. This is the hidden source of so much external chaos in your life. The unresolved tension within you manifests as sabotaged relationships, as careers that mysteriously stall just before breakthrough, and as a pervasive, gnawing sense of being an imposter in your own life. You project your disowned darkness onto colleagues, partners, and political figures, creating enemies in the outer world to avoid facing the one within. The psyche has one ultimate non-negotiable demand: wholeness. It will relentlessly generate suffering in the form of anxiety, depression, and purposelessness, until the tyrannical ego abandons its quest for sterile perfection and begins the difficult process of negotiation with the shadow. The tension you feel is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that your soul is forcing you to grow. The pressure must escalate until you are finally forced to turn and confront that which you have spent a lifetime repressing. Time, Block 8. 6. The climax of understanding, the sacred marriage. Here at the heart of the journey lies the single most transformative revelation that ends the internal war. Listen closely. The goal was never to defeat the shadow. The goal is to integrate it. Asterisk. Integration is not surrender. It is not allowing your darkest impulses to run rampant. It is the conscious, courageous, and deliberate act of acknowledging the dark aspects of your nature and finding a constructive place for their immense energy in your conscious life. This is a process of psychological alchemy. Your disowned aggression, when consciously integrated, is transformed from destructive rage into assertive drive and the power to enforce healthy boundaries. Your repressed fear, when honored and understood, becomes prudence, foresight, and a healthy respect for real-world dangers. Your chaotic, untamed impulses, when brought into the light of awareness, become the wellspring of creativity, spontaneity, and the ability to adapt to life's inherent uncertainty. This is what Jung called the union of opposites, the sacred marriage within the psyche. You must bring the darkness into the light, not to vanquish it, but to honor it, learn from it, and reclaim it as an essential part of your totality. Trampas Block 9. 7. The lifelong path of individuation. This transformative process of shadow integration is not a one-time event or a final destination you arrive at. It is the central, ongoing task of a conscious and meaningful life. Carl Jung gave this lifelong journey a name: Nordrun individuation. It is the process of becoming a true individual, a whole, complete, and undivided self. It is the heroic path away from being a mere product of your social conditioning, your parental programming, and your unconscious complexes, and toward becoming the unique, authentic author of your own existence. This is the ultimate aim of the psyche. Individuation does not promise a life free of pain or conflict. Instead, it offers something far more valuable: the strength to hold the tension of opposites within yourself. It is the capacity to be both disciplined and spontaneous, both compassionate and fierce, both rational and intuitive, both light and dark. It is the slow, deliberate, and deeply rewarding work of becoming not a good person, according to the ego's narrow blueprint, but a whole person, fully conscious of the vast and complex totality of your being. The inner silence you have been desperately seeking is not the sterile absence of thought or the forced quiet of a repressed mind. It is the profound, resonant silence that arrives only when the internal civil war has ended. It is the quiet confidence that blossoms from knowing, accepting, and honoring the totality of who you are, the light and the dark, the rational and the chaotic, the disciplined and the spontaneous. By ceasing the fight, by turning to face the shadow, not as an enemy to be vanquished, but as a disowned part of yourself to be reclaimed, you have fundamentally altered the entire landscape of your psyche. The immense psychic energy that was once consumed by the exhausting work of suppression, denial, and internal conflict is now liberated. This is not a minor shift. It is the dawning of a new kind of power and energy that is now available for the conscious and deliberate act of living fully. You have stopped trying to wrestle the river of your life into submission and have instead learned the sacred art of flowing with it, understanding that its currents, even the turbulent ones, are an inseparable part of your own journey. The struggle was never the obstacle to your peace. You now understand with absolute clarity that the struggle was the path itself. You are no longer a victim of your own unconscious depths, tossed about by moods and impulses you do not understand. You have been given the map and the compass. The principles of the backwards law, of non-resistant observation, and of conscious integration are not mere theories. They are the practical tools of psychological alchemy. You are now equipped to be the conscious architect of your own wholeness. This is the beginning of your true individuation, the lifelong process of becoming a complete, undivided individual. The journey does not end here, it begins. There will be new shadows to meet, deeper layers of the unconscious to explore, and constant opportunities to practice holding the tension of your own inner opposites. But you will no longer meet them with the blind fear of a soldier fighting in the dark. You will meet them with the wisdom of one who knows that the treasure is always found in the cave you were most afraid to enter. Your life improves not when you have finally perfected yourself according to the ego's rigid blueprint, but when you have the courage to embrace the magnificent, messy, and powerful entirety of your being. Your totality awaits. If this message has resonated with your search for a deeper understanding of yourself, subscribe to this channel to continue your journey into the psyche. Share this knowledge with another person who may be fighting their own silent war, so they too can find the path toward integration. And to explore the next step in this process, click on the video now on your screen about the archetype of the persona and the mask you show to the world.